Okay, good, I don't know, afternoon, almost good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is a very special session because, at least on my panels, which were eventually not that, there were too many in the last 2 days, but I refuse to accept any speakers on Zoom, remote, and also when people asked me if there's a way to watch the panels from remote or to record them, I said no, even though many of the panels were actually available to watch, because I felt that the Dryland Desert and Desertification Conference should be held in the desert in this very, very special campus. I visited here, well, not for the first time, of course, I've been here before, but for the first time as a staffer of Ben-Gurion University, and in my position, I visited with Professor Yaron, who was the founding head of the School of Sustainability and Climate Change. It was my first week as the head of the Institute for Climate and Environmental Policy. And Yaron said to me on the way, we drove together from the main campus in Beersheba, Yaron said to me, you're going to see now the campus who is the true environmental campus of BGU, because the labs here and the researchers here and the desert that's around us is actually, you know, obviously, many of you are writing grants lately, and the jargon living lab is used a lot. This is truly the case. So I'm very honored to be here. Today's panel will discuss a stressing issue that actually stretches from the north to the heart of the desert, and that is the basin of the Jordan River and the Dead Sea. Another conversation that Yaron and I had was that this is maybe a little bit distant from the eye or from the heart, like we say in Hebrew. There were years where it was much more in discussion, but it doesn't make it less important. On the contrary, with climate change and stresses and geopolitical situation, it gets maybe not the importance that it had, and we felt a need to lever it, to elevate it a little bit. So we initiated a working group in the institute that Yaron is part of, and many of the speakers here and guests here are part of. And started working, and our aim is to have policy recommendations that are science-based and to look for the science that is missing for the new policy that is needed. That is the aim of the group. I will present the speakers and the panel's flow because we have some remote speakers, and you will get the reason of it, and then we'll start with them. So first of all, we will hear opening remarks from Yaron, Professor Yaron Ziv, who is the head of the Spatial Ecology Lab, Department of Life Science, Ben-Gurion University. His opening remarks are titled, "How Responsible Can We Be? Is this the Dead Sea we want our grandchildren to see?" Yeah, promising. After Yaron, we will hear Nadav Bachar. Nadav is a researcher at our institute. He actually replaced Ophir Hendel, that I have to mention, that was with us, that did a lot of the work on the research that you will see at Nadav. Then they collaborated, they worked together. She left us, but temporary, to study in Cambridge, and we hope she'll come back with a lot of more knowledge. But Nadav will represent the work that was done, that was kind of, as you see the title, is trying to give some kind of a current evaluation of the state of the Dead Sea, with respect to policy, but it goes deeper into the science and the situation. After that, we'll hear from Dr. Ittai Gavrieli, a senior researcher in the Geological Survey of Israel, under the title The Future of the Dead Sea and Jordan River in light of severe water shortage in the region. After that, we'll be joined by Dr. Tamara, the Society for Protection of Nature in Israel, the largest and the most important, if I may say, environmental NGO in Israel. So thank you for joining us. And after that, we'll hear remarks and take questions from engineer Maysoon El-Zoabi, who is an international water diplomacy expert. She will join us via Zoom. Maysoon was the former water inspector, Secretary General of Jordan. Thank you. She only left the international title, but we know that. And from Dr. Shadad Attili, who is the former Palestinian Minister of Water and head of the Palestinian Water Authority, the PWA, in Palestine and the Palestinian Authority. And part of our work is kind of forming a regional group with the other two countries that share the Dead Sea with us, thinking that any policy that we come up with cannot be only Israeli, and this is a shared region in the Dead Sea, but also throughout the Jordan River Basin. The last point I want to make is that these are times, this discussion is timely from several reasons. Because of climate change that is deteriorating the entire region, because of new regional geopolitics. It's not only the war, but it also started before. From yesterday and today, we discussed a lot of regional cooperation. Yesterday, ECOPIS had a panel here on the water and energy exchange that bring new opportunities in the northern side of Israel in terms of water desalination and piping and infrastructure, and giving the stress from the 90s red dead canal to maybe new opportunities in the entire region and the water shortage. Ittai will stress in his lecture, so it's changing. And another thing that is very, very timely, and I understand it's happening as soon as tomorrow, maybe, is the Israel new concession for extraction of the industry from the Dead Sea. We are approaching the end of 2025. The concession for the Dead Sea industry is with us since the 60s. Of course, the environmental, political, regulatory context has changed dramatically in the last 60 years. And the concession is up for renewal in 2030, in 5 years from now, and it's already in discussions with the Ministry of Finance at top, but the other implications, of course, environmental, social, economical, etc., are being brought into the discussion, and we hope that our work can contribute to the end of the concession and what should be done in the next 60 years of the Dead Sea. And I have to mention here the SPNI, the Heschel Center, Arava Institute, ECOPIS, many of the organizations active in a NGO, environmental civil society campaign that is hopefully will be vocal and leave the discussion not only to a governmental discussion, but also engage the public. So with that maybe too long opening, I will invite Professor Yaron Ziv for his opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamar, and chapeau for all your activities and stuff at Ben-Gurion University, the Institute. And it's really, for me, a great occasion to be here in this session. As you know, it's about time that we will bring up the issue of the Dead Sea and other related issues, given that, you know, it's a big issue that is somehow neglected. Now, I was asked to give some opening words, and I'm going to steal some 7 minutes of your life now. And, you know, usually as a professor at university, he gave many talks, presentation all over the world. So I used to give a presentation, and when I was asked in previous times to greet a such an opening, and I do it just by heart and things like that. But this time, for the first time in my life, I've never done it. I would like to start with some kind of, maybe it's a testimony, I don't know. You will decide how to call it later. So let me share it with you because it takes me back with my own history that relate, by the way, to some of the people sitting in this crowd. So thank you for coming. Okay, my name is Yaron, and I've been working at Ben-Gurion University for over 27 years, currently as a professor of ecology and conservation biology. My connection to nature as an adult began 43 years ago when I served as a field school guide at the Society for Protection of Nature in Israel. Since then, my work has focused on biodiversity, ecosystems, and the ways human actions shape them. Over the years, I've chosen to focus with my students and colleagues on human-oriented conservation challenges such as nature reserve conflicts, agroecology, and ecological restoration. 6 years ago, I had the privilege to establish and lead the BGU School of Sustainability and Climate Change, uniting more than 180 faculty members working to advance understanding and practice of environmental sustainability so that our children and grandchildren, and this is my focus here, as you will hear later on, may face fewer risks caused by today's irresponsible decisions worldwide. Because land use and natural resources are geographically based, responsibility ultimately lies with each individual country, which must safeguard its environmental treasures for its citizens and for the world. This is why our team at Ben-Gurion University, together with partners from academia and high tech, initiated the first international country-based nature conservation index designed to hold up a mirror to each nation regarding its conservation commitments and achievements. And that's what I actually presented at the COP30 in Brazil about a week and a half ago. My argument is that every country has the obligation to protect its natural entities for the entire world, as nature has no borders, and diminishing nature has consequences for everyone on this planet, not only today's citizens, but also future generations. And I guess that you see where I'm going, okay? Israel, yeah, that's where I'm going. Although small, harbors several global natural wonders, including Jordan River and the Dead Sea, the lowest point on Earth, one of the saltiest bodies of water with unique mineral composition and deep biogeographic significance. As part of the Great Rift Valley, this area, including the southern Jordan River, is or used to be an amazing biodiversity hotspot of species originating from different biogeographic regions and a pathway for the evolutionary expansion of diverse taxonomy groups moving over time from Africa to Asia and Europe. And I guess there are some zoologists here who can confirm that I say it correctly. It was also the corridor for ancient human dispersal, including routes taken by early hominins, as well as by Homo sapiens roughly 60 to 7,000 years ago, when we sometimes forget what is the contribution of the Great Rift Valley. The current Dead Sea is the remnant of Lake Lisan. There are some geologists who can correct me later on, which reached its high state about 26,000 years ago and then gradually declined. For the last 2,000 years, until the 1960s, the Dead Sea remained relatively stable within a moderate range of fluctuation of even tens of meters. From the 1960s onward, however, a series of human interventions, including diversion of the Jordan River and its springs for agriculture and domestic use, dams that block natural flow, pumping water to evaporation pools for mineral extraction, and the lack of coordinated regional management, you talked about cooperation, triggered a dramatic decline. Since then, the Dead Sea has lost more than 1/3 of its surface area, dropped around 45 meters, and continues to decline by 1.1 to 1.3 meters per year, while the southern Jordan River has been reduced to a fraction of its historical flow with severe habitat loss and degradation. Okay? The landscapes I knew as a teenager hiking the Judea Desert and the Bachar area have been transformed into a degraded, fragmented, and abandoned system. What my children observe today is not what I observed many years ago. This comes with major social and economic consequences, and such as collapsing beaches, thousands of sinkholes, loss of tourism, damage to infrastructure, and tragically, global disappointment. A recent study, just we heard about it last week, ranked Dead Sea as the second most disappointing attraction worldwide. Okay? It's not that we say that, it's a big organization that do it every year. I don't know. Anyhow, this is not something to be proud of. I still remember camping as a field school guide 4 decades ago with youth groups on the Engedi beach, just meters from the water. Today, that entire area is closed and ruined. While some claim this degradation is unavoidable, I, like many Israelis, strongly disagree. Regardless of the challenges of full restoration, it is clear that the southern Jordan River and the Dead Sea have been irresponsibly neglected by successive governments in a manner that disrespects one of Israel's most precious natural treasures and affects not only Israeli citizens, but also our neighbors and the entire world. Returning to my statement about every country's responsibility, it is time for Israel and its neighboring countries to accept responsibility and commit the resources needed to restore and protect this extraordinary region. I truly hope that my grandchildren and yours will have the opportunity to witness a reviving and restored Dead Sea basin rather than the collapsing system we see today. And I pray, I usually don't pray, but it's a way of saying it, that the studies and initiatives presented here today in this session mark the beginning of a new era of restoration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yaron. I don't think I've ever heard such such a negative description with such an inspiring and optimistic prophecy. So thank you. Yeah, definitely. So now I call Nadav Bachar to present the research. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me, everyone? Because of the Zoom. So my name is Nadav Bachar. I'm a researcher in the National Institute for Climate Policy. And in the last few months, I'm working as part of the Dead Sea research team. Today I'm going to present findings. Now I want to thank Ophir Hender, that's not here today because she's in the UK, she studied there, but she contributed along with this project. And I will present now. So firstly, let's talk about one mentioned the Dead Sea level is declined about 1 meter per year and even more. As you can see it in the last about 100 years, you can see it's not something that will only happen. It's only a phenomenon for the last few decades. before it's not more moderate, even not declining at all. We understand they're talking about between 700 to 800 million million cubic meters every year that we need to deliver additional water that we need to deliver for the Dead Sea in order to stabilize its level and prevent from decline. So if you want to see it visually, we can see what's happened to the Dead Sea in the last few decades. So we see how it looks like in 1972. And this one is not a prediction for the future. It's a photo from 2019. Okay, just 6 years ago, or 7. So the prediction for the next future, if we're gonna don't do anything and we'll just continue in the scenario of business as usual, the level of the Dead Sea will be between minus 500 to minus 300 meters beneath the sea level, and it shrink in about 50% of the surface area. Means it will increase the severely in tourism industry. A lot of others issues that related to the Dead Sea. So in order to solve this or suggest some solution for this problem, Tamar and Yaron and all of the other team members create this group, the research group. We have a member from the Dead Sea Guardian, the Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel, EcoPeace, Yad Nadav, our institute, and the Israel Society of Ecology and Environmental Science, and more. And all of us together try to suggest some solution for this problem. First, so this is the goals that we come with. So firstly is to spread this knowledge before we can suggest any solution or any solve for an idea for this project. You firstly need to summarize and understand what there is today, then to identify the key research gap, and then to publish some proposal to a bridge on these gaps, and then after we got all of the information that we need, to recommend about a rehab strategy for the future in order to make sure that the Dead Sea will not continue in this course. So for today, we're going to focus on the existing knowledge. What we know for now from this section, we can take the key research gaps, and we hope that in the next few months we can also publish first proposals. So for today, we're going to talk firstly about the water source and flows. What is the options that we have in order to deliver more water to the Dead Sea? Then the environmental effect and risk of them, how it can affect the environmental, then impact and benefit, mainly economically, but not only. And lastly, the Lower Jordan River is also part of this environment we need to consider and take into account, and think about in terms also in environmental effect and benefits. So first, talk about the water flows. So first optional water, the traditional one, the water that came with the Jordan River to the Dead Sea a decade and 1,000 years from in the past, is a fresh water, and for today is desalination water. So this source of water today is became much more problematic than in the past. Firstly, because of regional water security. Palestine and Jordan, also our neighborhood in the north, and also Israel, don't have a lot of water. So people need water for drink, so will not deliver the water to the Dead Sea if there is no drinking water for the Jordanian and Palestinian people. For example, I'll talk about it in the last session, that in Jordan, in Rabat Amon, in Amman, there is only 36 hours per week of water that's available in the taps of the Jordanian. So if this is the situation, we cannot deliver fresh water to the Dead Sea. Secondly, there's some objection that rise by the government of Israel because it costs a lot of money in order to make this desalination responsible to a lot from the water of Israel. So deliver this water to the Dead Sea means a big expense, a big cost, and today it not looks feasible. And lastly, some ecological concern, which I'll talk about in detail in the next slide. So the next optional source for water is treated wastewater. So Israel is expect to produce around 1,060, 1,080 million cubic meters of treated water in 25 years, in 2050. But this water for today, according to the plans of the Water Authority and Ministry of Agriculture, are devoted to agriculture mainly, and especially in the setting of climate change and the increasing demand for water in agriculture. So it might be a portion of the solution, but a lot of from this water will go to agriculture. So we need to think about more complex and maybe some mix of some other resources for water. And then we came to the brackish water. So brackish water is water that is salty, but not salty as seawater, but not fresh or with a low concentration of salt like fresh water. So this water, we have it in a relatively small volume of water compared to the former sources we talk about. And also part of them are connected to some agriculture and municipal supply, but there is still some portion of this water that may be delivered to the Dead Sea, and it can be part of the mix that we're talking about. Then we arrive into the next option, is some water from the seas around us. So all the years in the past, we talk mainly about the Red Dead course to bring some water from the Red Sea to the Dead Sea. As you can see in this graph, you can see that there is a big altitude that costs a lot of money to deliver the water from the lower heights of the Red Sea to overcome the mountain over there in the and then to flow it back to the Dead Sea. And then if we're willing to compare it to the Med Dead road, where is written valley, the first course. So you can see that altitude is more moderate, means it costs less money. So for today, the last plans of the Ministry of Energy and the Water Authority, they indicate about this option like the preferable, but both of them cost a lot of money. Okay, although we can achieve a lot of water in the Mediterranean and the Red Sea, it costs a lot of money, about to 15 billion shekels in order to create and establish this infrastructure. Another 1 billion shekels per year for operation. And so for now, there is no source for funding of this project. So the ministry and the government side about not continue with this initiative, but if they will find, or someone else, or maybe some private sector will find the require money, so maybe it's again will be optional solution. Then we can talk about decreasing the amount of water, reducing the industrial operation loss. So for today, around 250 to 330 million cubic meters per every year are evaporated by the industry in the Jordanian shore and also in the Israeli shore. So if we can now, under the new license for the Israeli industry activity for ICL, we can charge money for this water, or we can decide about some condition of taking this water. Maybe we can mitigate it, and we also can increase the likely to arrive our goal of 700 to 800 million cubic meters. And lastly, there is a lot of brine over there. The brine that comes from the Mediterranean plains of Israel, and maybe there is another source of brine from the Aqaba plain, expected, I hope, to be established in the next years. So this is another source of brine. In the Jordanian case, this brine is for now is supposed to go to the Red Sea, which is quite sensitive environment. And if we can deliver it, if we can deliver it to the Dead Sea, so it also will save the environmental damage from the Red Sea and also improve us to achieve our goal in the Dead Sea. So for now, till now, we talk about the option to deliver an additional water to the Dead Sea, and now we're going to talk about the environmental effect of it and risk that it may cause. So firstly, we'll talk about esterification. So esterification is the layer of the Dead Sea. So in the past, there was in the upper layer of the Dead Sea a light layer with a low concentration of salt, and the lower one was with more salt. So for today, because we stop a lot of from the flow from the Jordan River, the fresh water. So the upper layer became less it became more concentrated with water. During the summer, it's still lighter because it became warmer. But during the winter, when it's colder, so there is a mix between the upper and the lower layers, and it's not create any. So for today, there is no any difference between the layers of the Dead Sea. It means a lot for a lot of reasons, other effects of the Dead Sea, which we're going to talk now. So this is one of the implications, and one of the meaning of this mixing of the Dead Sea. So if you're going to deliver some water sources, and the upper layer will be full of nutrients and full of issues, so maybe there will some biological bloom may occur in the Dead Sea. And in some cases, maybe create some odor and turbidity. So this is more likely to happen where there is some separation between the layers, because the upper one will be with lower concentration of salt, and it's maybe support this appearance of the bacteria and algae. So this is another risk that we may consider. Then there is the risk for creation of gypsum. So the Dead Sea is full of calcium. And if we will deliver and we will deliver some water source with high concentration of sulfate, so maybe it can create some gypsum. So this gypsum give the water, make it more white. So there is some research, for example, Eliraz, that argue that this white phenomena, gypsum, is actually can attract some tourists and maybe attraction for other people. But there is other that think that it might be a bit problematic and may hurt the nature. But this is another phenomena that we shall consider. This picture is from the US. And the last one is the appearance of the sinkholes. So if the water will come, and mainly fresh water, they may melt some salt deposit that's placed beneath the ground around the Dead Sea, and maybe in this case to increase the amount of course around it. It's more likely to happen when the concentration is lower. So if I want to sum it up, so if we will deliver a low concentration water, for example, the wastewater or the fresh water, so there is more likely to happen biological blooming because of the stratification or sinkholes and against stratification. And if we will deliver a more concentrated water with higher concentration of water, so it's more likely to have the gypsum settling and some risk to the lower Jordan River that we're going to talk about in a moment. So now I'm going to move on and talk about the impacts and benefits for the Dead Sea in Israel in general, the environmental, in the environment, if we will. Will succeed with this rehabilitation of the Dead Sea. So firstly, the industry around it, the Jordanian one and also the Israeli one, is worth several billion of shekels every year. If we can stop the decline of the Dead Sea and we can preserve the Dead Sea, or even maybe bring it back to how it was before, so it's really worth a lot for those industry and also for Israel and for Jordan. Then there is a big issue of tourism and also from agriculture that happen around the Dead Sea. So the annual benefit, the assessment of the government and some private company, that the annual benefit estimated in several billion shekels in Israel alone. And there is another sum in Jordan. Beside these advantages, there is the issue of environmental recovery, that it has its own value, improved landscape, improving quality of life, and avoiding sinkhole damage that may cause to actually risk people's life, infrastructure, and really undesirable. And lastly, maybe you can encourage some cooperation between the parties in the area, Jordan, Palestine, and Israel. So we talk about the cooperation. We devoted the whole panel, the last panel, about this topic. And I think this is also an opportunity to encourage this cooperation and to see how we can bring these parties together, because their disagreement is so big, and if we can find some place when they can collaborate together to achieve some for goal that's important for each one of them. So it's a real opportunity that we need to take and doing it. And lastly, the lower Jordan River. So today, the Jordan River, the lower one, is highly saline, polluted, with loss of natural flow and biodiversity. This looks very poor compared to what it was before in general. And if we can recover it by delivering some water to it, they have a lot of advantage. Again, the biodiversity recovery, local economic boost, quality of life, also can protect the groundwater that for today are getting hurt because of the quality of life that flows from this road. So the advantages are big, and we just need to think how we can do it. So if I want to sum it up, so this is the main sources of water that we talk about: fresh water, brackish, treated wastewater, and Mediterranean water. Mediterranean water. So each one of them have its own advantage and disadvantage. And I think that if we can make some mix out of them and can take some from each source of it, and maybe we have a real chance to meet our goals. I think the fresh water is less relevant in this for today, because mainly the Jordan and Palestinian Authority and the Palestine, and because it's too expensive. And although it was the solution in the past when there is a lot of water in the Jordan River, for today I think brackish water, treated wastewater, and Mediterranean are most likely to happen, and also reducing of industrial operation loss from Israeli and Jordanian industry, and maybe even the brine. So this is the last slide. I think 2026 may be a turning point for the rehabilitation effort of the Dead Sea, and also maybe the lower Jordan River. Firstly, because the war will finally end, and maybe now there is a better opportunity to renegotiate and reconnect with our neighbors around. Secondly, because of the license expiration that will happen very soon, in about 5 years. I guess the decision we're going to make in the next 2 or 3 years. And lastly, because there is a whole trend of more environmental, more investment, mainly from the EU, but also from another parts of the world. So I think we have a good opportunity. If we can gap all of the research gap we find that we recognize in this work, we have a big chance to maybe make some improvement and make this project a success. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We will hear questions later. Now I want to call Dr. Ittai Gavrieli. Let's see if my technical capacity is enough to bring your presentation on. Unbelievable, it is. It's there. It's there, but that's not the question. The question is whether my capacity is enough, and it is. Oh, no. Oh.
Thank you. We should have coordinated our talk. We should have coordinated our talk, because I want to repeat some of what Nadav said. But I want to start off with Yaron, with the gray hairs, so I can share. I've been working on the Dead Sea since 1984 when I first started my master's. I've been working on it off and off since then. The major effort was as a chief scientist working for the project commission, the World Bank, study of the Red Sea, Dead Sea, feasibility study, submitted to the World Bank in 2011. The data and the knowledge that was presented here is derived from this study, which was international, mostly involving many institutions, including the Ben-Gurion University here. And then I was also involved in policy papers, happened to be submitted to Tamara. Some of it my views haven't changed dramatically since then. And I'm speaking on my behalf, although I'm a government employee, government research institute. I'm speaking on my behalf. My views on the matter. To be more of a scientific, I think if Tamara will also say my thoughts about how what the that public the PR the Dead Sea has received, particularly the sinkholes. And I think one of the reasons that you mentioned here that the Dead Sea is one of the most disappointing sites should be one of the best sites, honestly, because when you see very few of the pictures, because it has received such a bad regulation, people are afraid to travel on Road 90. And I know personally people think that they will fall into sinkhole. Incredible. And you look at the risk map that the survey has issued. None of it. The only site that was none of the roads exposed to sinkholes. But nevertheless, the idea that the sinkholes pose any danger to anyone traveling along the shores of the Dead Sea. But we'll come to that. I hope we get the chance to speak about that. So is the pointer or you? All right. So it actually works. It works. Yeah, surprising. And the pointer also works. Yeah, it does. Wow, amazing. Okay. Okay, so I think the best example is this. I mean, the topic of our talk is really this dramatic graph showing the rapid decline in the water level of the Dead Sea, nearly since its height in the end of the 18th century, end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, when it was at its height, centuries old height. Keep in mind, centuries old height. It was in minus 395, 392. It's very exceptional. That's a really a high level that was not typical for the last centuries, for the last few centuries, because it, again, climatic changes at that particular site. It was very rainy at the end of the 19th century. But anyway, we've been experiencing over the last the last 2 decades, the rate of water decline is on the average 1.15. Last year, guess what? It was a drought year, 1.26 meters last year. The year before it was only 1 meter, but it was a nice, good and rainy winter. So it really does respond to, on top of everything else, it does respond to the drought, and we are heading into a drought. Let's see what will happen this year, but we're not very optimistic right now. And the level here is just a month old. I was hoping to get the last figure, but it's not in yet. This is on a monthly basis. This was minus 440. You can update your graph. This is today, but updated for next month. It will probably be, I expect it to drop by 10 more centimeters, at least, this month. I mean, they publish it every... Yes, but it was drought. There were very few floods, and so I don't expect it. And it was a warm. It was relatively warm. Okay, so when you translate the 1.15 meters on annual basis, this is 700 million cubic meters. Okay, actually it's more than that, because what you don't see, in fact, you don't see that you precipitate as the lake level recedes, and you see 1.15 meter receding. In reality, it recedes 1.25 in terms of volume, because it accumulates 10 centimeters of halite, table salt at the bottom, so you're not actually raising the bottom. So in reality, in terms of water, it's equivalent to 1.25 centimeters. So I don't go into that kind of details, but since you give the introduction, I can go into more details. So it's really 750 to 800, okay? But if you do simple calculation, it's about these figures, and I don't think numbers really, when we're dealing with these kind of numbers, the order of magnitude is what is amazing. 700 million cubic meters are lost annually from the lake. And the major reason is, of course, the major source of water flowing into the Dead Sea is from the lower Jordan River, which estimates put the natural historical flow at more than 1 billion cubic meters. Probably some estimate put it even at 1,500 MCMs. But, the more conservative one, 1,100 to 1,300 MCM. Nowadays, it only discharges less than 100 MCM annually. We can speak about why and where, but obviously this reflects the water crisis in our region, because the water is besides the climate change, and we can speak about that as well. But Jordan Israel, Jordan, Syria to some extent much lower than it, and even Lebanon, the estimate is about 50 meters from that drainage basin. By and large, it's Israel and Jordan that take up most of the water flow, that never reaches the lake. But if you look at it on a larger scale, okay, we're dealing here with the terminal lake, meaning that water leaves only through evaporation. And when we look at the budget altogether, whatever comes in, so water leaves through evaporation. And since it's a terminal lake, when inflow equals the evaporation, that's when you have the steady state constant level. Historically, the lake has fluctuated dramatically, and it fluctuated tens of meters, and these 10 of meters, when it exceeded minus 400, the southern basin flooded, and the surface area of the lake increased by 30%. Again, when water level was negative, water budget or water balance was negative, it receded, and then the southern basin dried out. It's very unusual to see historically, not going back many centuries ago. It's very rare to see the southern basin dry. No, it used to be dry for probably 50% of the time in the Holocene in the last 1,000 years. Obviously, what happened in the Pleistocene the 1,000 years ago, it extended all the way to the Sea of Galilee and all the way to Hatzela. So it really does fluctuate. And in between those two periods, it was at lower water level than it is today. So if we look at it in that perspective, and how the lake breathes, it's very different from what we experience in 3 decades. In the transition between the Pleistocene and the Holocene, we are not sure what to in the transition, about 10,000 years ago. And part of it is actually, when it receded, it precipitated that same salt layer that is today responsible for the sinkholes. Okay, so it's kind of but we're not sure, and there's a big argument of how deep it went, how low it went. Totally, natural. No, I'm putting.
It's like the Earth is known ice period.
This is exactly it. I mean, it applies in the Holocene. It does. What I'm talking about is the natural. What I'm saying is that if you look at it geologically, it's one aspect. If we look at it historically, it also fluctuated around minus 400, and even in historical perspectives, it included, and in some periods it included the southern basin, some periods did not include the southern basin, reflecting really the local climate, no human intervention. What we're now in the Anthropocene is completely different, and this brings me to, and we estimate today the inflows of 300. That includes also about 100 or less from the Lower Jordan. But now we have another player in this terminal lake, which are the industries. And I will be speaking about the industries, the two industries together. We can then discuss about the Dead Sea works specifically, but basically we're seeing the same industries working on two sides, very mimicking one another. In both cases, they have their pumping station in the very south part of the lake here, pumping water through to the southern basin where they locate evaporation ponds. They decrease the volume of the water that they pump by about 50% and discharge back very extremely concentrated brines that sink to the bottom of the lake when it just reaches the lake, devoid of potassium, devoid of everything that they have precipitated out. But they are a major player in our story, and in fact, we suddenly will have another arrow. In this terminal lakes, we are intervening in the water balance by pumping out water, not only from evaporation, but actually pumping out water and releasing back about half the volume. And so on average, the two companies evaporate in the evaporation from 300 mpm, and which are responsible for about 50 centimeters water drop a year. This is just the industry. And the impact of the industry, I have a question. The impact of the industries is incredible when we want to consider stabilizing the water level. Yes, you're welcome to ask question and object. In the policy paper that we submitted to the ministry, we suggested that they should be paying money for the compensating for the Israeli part. Yes, but. No, 300. No. Half about half. Yes. Yeah. Of course not. No. You want to see even more than that? When you stand up, when you're in Mitzvah looking down, you can see the impact of the mixing of these two brines. You have the Dead Sea brines mixing with what the industry is called the end brines. Okay? The industry is called, and actually this is what forms today the Wadi Arava. What flows in the Dead Sea, to the Dead Sea is actually Wadi Arava, and 300 MC is actually the largest source of water going into the Dead Sea today. Okay? When these two water bodies mix, because the chemistry I won't explain, they actually precipitate tables halite. And have a salt delta. This is the only place in the world where you have a chemical salt delta. The two water bodies meet and they produce a salt delta. It's an amazing site. And again, if you ask me, it could be a tourist. It's an amazing place to see. Nowhere else in the world do you have mixing of brines actually forming a delta, salt delta. Now, this is going to be this was the topic of my master. So, but this is going to be destroyed nowadays because of the salt harvesting. And we can discuss about the salt harvesting. That's another topic that we can discuss. But let's go back to this. So the overall, we're actually evaporating not 100, 1,000 or 1 billion cubic meters of water from the lake, 700 from the surface in reality, 300 in the evaporation ponds, and effectively increasing the surface area of the lake, even though the water level is so low. And we are, and the net loss is 700. Actually, it's even higher. I don't want to go into much more detail. Let's compare it to other rapids. Now I'm going to be a bit skeptical about what has been said here. This is not the only saline lake that is shrinking. It's probably the saltiest, and it has unique composition. It's not the only one. So this figure is well known. This shrinking water. But look at the RLC, which is very often the Dead Sea is compared to ecological disaster that happened in the RLC is happening in the Dead Sea. Now we can discuss about the ecological disaster in the RLC, biodiversity loss in the RLC, fish industries, and look at the fishing boats that are here. Okay, but the area shrunk to nothing. Look at what happened. Well, absolutely. Everything except great salt lake is not the human made, and this is really environmental change. But look at the changes there are, and it does fluctuate because it is so shallow. The emphasis here, all these lakes are very, very shallow. So in other words, 1 drop, a 2-meter drop, means that they're imposing their shorelines. Lake Umuya, fantastic. I'd love to be there in Iran. Soon. Yes, but okay, but that's look what happened just in a very short time, and Great Salt Lake, which is more of a response to changes in the water budget in the precipitation in the southwest the U.S. But you see here, and this is not the only examples, but the biggest jump actually took place in 1979, 98. This is when the southern basin dried out. In 1970, and according to, again, a study that we've done, there's a paper actually out, we think that it would have likely been dried out anyway without human intervention, because remember, when in the beginning of the 20th century, we were at the height. Climate change, we can say it's natural. Initially, in the 1930s, when the lake began to drop, some of it was taken because of damming of the Sea of Galilee, but some of it was also climate change. And our air became more and more dry. So it is very likely that the lake, the southern basin would have been dried anyway. But it would have stabilized then because the surface area would have shrunk enough to compensate for the loss of the inner water of the and let me just emphasize the point that I just showed. This is the Dead. Look, this is the Dead Sea. Look at the hole in the ground. Basically, it's a hole in the ground. It's not a hole in the wall, but it's a hole in the ground. The deepest surface, one mentioned, it's the deepest surface or lowest surface on Earth. It's all, but it's also the deepest terrestrial surface, subaerial surface, minus 730 meters. And look at the walls here. Because of the geological settling, this is really steep, extremely steep shores, particularly on the eastern side, on the Jordanian side, it's really, really steep. And less so on the western side. And what has evaporated in the southern basin is really a shallow 10-meter deep. At the most, it was 10 meters. In the whole sea, it was 10 meters deep. And that has declined. But what we see, that means that the continuous decline in water level will not lead to shrinkage. It will drop, but it will not shrink it. So the comparison with the Aral Sea and what we're leaving to our next generation, we are leaving the Dead Sea. It will be more difficult to get there, and I think this is our challenge. But the brine will be the Dead Sea brine will be the brine. We're changing its composition because we are extracting potassium, and we are precipitating the sodium chloride. And so in the potassium to magnesium, that's an issue. That's an issue, and I published it myself of how the lake chemistry changes because of the industry. No, always keep it. Yeah. All right. So this is from a report to the World Bank. We were asked about the future of how the lake can sustain reject brine from evaporation. This was when the terms of reference talked about discharging 1,500 MCM annually. And I insisted on presenting what will happen to the Dead Sea without any intervention. And they actually did not like the idea of it all, showing how the lake evolves. See, here is the business as usual that I mentioned. And see here, this is with the industry. Okay, and look at the time here. Okay, we talk about centuries. The process which can happen because it is so deep. The lake is so deep. With the industries continuing to operate, and then we decided, okay, let's stop the industries. Let's imagine the impossible and stop the industries at year 2050. Why 2050? So no one will blame us that it coincides with the end of the concession. So 2050, both industries stop. And look what happens. You see the impact of the industries, that 0.5 meter, but nevertheless the lake will continue to decline when it receives only 300 MCM annually, and it will stabilize at some level that is really the level at which the lake has shrunk a bit. Salinity has increased enough to lower the rate of evaporation, and this is the level when inflow goes the evaporation. That's when we stabilize. Now, the assumption here, this model incorporates the climate, and the annual climate based on, it runs here on many years of a lot of data, can be redone, can be improved. We assume no change in climate. assumed no change in the water inflow. Both can now very optimistic. So it will probably not stabilize minus 510, as it says here, may stabilize 50, maybe even lower. But I think this is the look at the bathymetry of the Dead Sea. This is the bathymetry which I mentioned before. And you see how the shoreline, the difference between, let's say, this is today's 450 and minus 5 and the 500. It does shrink. It does shrink, but not to that, not to great extent. Nothing similar to what we see in the Aral or any of the other saline lakes because of the geological setting. Okay. By the way, this part, because this part here is this is the salt delta I mentioned. The salt delta. This is the Lissan Peninsula. You see this? This is the salt delta. This is artificial human, and this is much has grown since dramatically. You can actually see it even from the road. Okay, so that's okay. So I'll run. So what are the difference to this? So one of the options is business as usual. This is what the previous graph presented. Again, I'm not recommending that. Do not understand. It's not what I'm saying. But when you business as usual is an option that should be put on the table, not as a default, but as a decision. And there's a big difference between that. Not by discussing it and saying, well, something has to be done and not be done, and then this is the default. This is what's been happening last year. The other alternative is really intervention in the water, in the water balance of the day. And then the question is, what is the source of these water? Fresh water, treated wastewater, as I mentioned here, seawater, reject ground from seawater desal, or closure of the industries, or limiting their contribution. Every decision here has an environmental impact, and most of the impact, keep it in mind, it's not limited to the Dead Sea or even to the Dead Sea basin. It's beyond the Dead Sea basin. Anything other than business as usual means that we are going to intervene somewhere else beyond the drainage basin of the Dead Sea. I will go with the freshwater desal. Okay, this is Israel today desals less than 800 MCM. This is what we do today. Look at the pictures. These are some of the pictures. Each one of desal plants take up land, produces CO2, diverts reject brine to the Mediterranean, and then with the additional infrastructure, it has an environmental cost. You have to keep in mind, and even though we are drinking it, this is 800 MCM is really all potable water, right? This is the consumption of Israel, more or less. And the plans are to nearly double it in 2035, say. This is the official plans of the Israel Water Authority to double it. So in other words, some of these plants will be expanded, new ones are being built. Every one of them will mean another footprint on the environment along the shores of the Mediterranean. Okay, with all whatever is used. The 1500 includes also plans for the 200 MCMs in the Prosperity for Jordan. Of course, I'm not sure with the figures how much are included here for the PA, but that's certainly also the responsibility of Israel under the present conditions. So this is all. These are the plans. If we are now. What about the Dead Sea? Now, if you want to suggest, do we want to add fresh water to the Dead Sea? Is that feasible? Are we going to add 700 MCM? It's, in other words, drop another 3-4 plants just for the Dead Sea to discharge them into the Jordan River, rehabilitate them, reach the Dead Sea, and to evaporate. And then you speak with our Jordan counterpart, and you'll hear soon. They're appalled. I mean, they will take everything. They tell us, if we have fresh water flowing in the Jordan River, we will pump them. We need them. They are in such a water crisis. So this is the option of fresh water. Personally, I don't think it's solely politically, morally today to desal water for the Dead Sea. As much as I like it, I love it, and I spend the time, it's really something that on our responsibility to our region, something that is not viable. In my view, it's very different from discharging 100 MCM, rehabilitating the lake, the river, pumping it to the bottom of just before it discharges into the Jordan River, into the Dead Sea, and use it for whatever use in Jordan. This was in the policy paper that we suggested. This is what we suggested. Rehabilitate it, coordinate it with the Jordanian, let them have the water just after it flows through the Jordan River, but not in huge volumes. The other alternative, and I'm jumping, is the Red Sea and the Red Dead project. We all know it. The idea that of pumping water from the Gulf is a trilateral project. The Palestinian Authority, Jordan, and Israel. The idea was to provide potable water, most in Jordan, and we're dealing here with potentially huge volumes. It was agreeable, including all our recommendation of, we set a limit on how much, and I'll show that in a minute. But the project was abandoned for political reasons. Then came the prosperity, and we don't know what will happen with the prosperity now. And the Jordanians, they remain thirsty. They need water, and we cannot ignore that. Jordan is planning to unilaterally desalinize water in Aqaba and discharge reject brine to the Gulf. Now, basically the plan is very much in line with the Dead Sea, except now the Jordanians dropped the Dead Sea. They will be pumping water. Hopefully they will be pumping in according to the specific environmental restrictions that were made in the study, in the Red Sea study of the World Bank, and pump water from a certain depth, so not to interfere with water exchange across the Gulf. But no one spoke about discharging reject brine. And wouldn't it be right to then reconsider, if they are going ahead and planning it, and it seems that they are, look, this is just a month old. They seem to be, they have already have, we'll hear maybe from my son more, but there seems to be signed a treaty on that, with a contractor to build it. I think here Israel needs to wake up and say, hey, let's see what we can do with the reject brine. And lastly, this is an option, but let's put a cap on it, because now we're going to the industrial, to the environmental issues. But we told the World Bank, and all parties agreed to that. The World Bank agreed, the European Investment Bank, the Jordanian, the Palestinian Authority, the government of Israel, they agreed. We are putting a cap on 400 MCM annually that can be discharged to the Dead Sea. And I won't go into, this is the report that we submitted, and I will not go into more than just pointing out this. This is the rate of lake level drop, and this is the more volume you discharge, the more you mitigate the rate of water level decline, until you discharge about 700 to 800. This is when lake level, when you stabilize the lake, not to speak of raising the level. What we see here is that about 400 MCM, this is when we limit it to 400 MCM. We are confident that in 400 MCM, will not have stratification of the water column. In other words, the water that will be discharged into the lake will mix completely. And if it will mix completely, whatever the impact, the environmental, the geochemical change will be done homogeneously throughout the water column. Gypsum will precipitate. There's no question that gypsum will precipitate. It will precipitate. You can try it. Just take the sample from this. And but our major concern is really not the gypsum. Our major concern is really the biology and this is our recommendation to the World Bank was actually do a pilot. We limit ourselves to 400 MCM. We might be able to bring in more water, but this has to be very well mitigated. By the way, the Jordanian agreed that the Geological Survey will be monitoring the Dead Sea on the Jordanian side as water level, as the water will be destroyed. This is what we're worried about. And look, the northern leg of the Great Salt Lake is red, and this is because, and you can see this kind of these are Archaea and it's some of the things, Dunaliela, and then you have Archaea growing on top of it. And look, the salinity here, people can float here. The salinity here allows people to float. There's not a single asphalt road or touristic site there. No one dips there. And you ask yourself, why is that? No one. So is this what we want to have in the Dead Sea? And this is something that personally I think needs to be avoided. It's not something that we can say, well, we'll see how it will develop. And that's a risk. We can discuss why it wasn't there in the past, but we did show that it can happen. And it will happen particularly when you add phosphate to the system. We experimented with that. We've seen it in nature in 1991 when the lake stratified and began blooming. We add a little bit of phosphate and it blooms. Guess what? What does the antiscalant in the reject brine contain? Polyphosphate. So that's a nutrient for the bee cell. So with this, well, I'll let you read. I think I tried to convince it. You know, there are risks. We're choosing between bad and worse, but the situation is not as bad as everyone. And look at just the pictures. What is the potential? The potential is incredible. If it's accessible, and you just have to listen to a different tone about what people say about the Dead Sea. Thank you.
Thank you, Ittai. When I was Minister of Environment, I had, I wasn't the Minister of, security, but I had many issues under debate and under, politics, etc. I had Katsa and money and funding, many stuff. I have never seen an issue so emotional and conflictual like the Dead Sea. That was a subject for inner politics inside the ministry, and with that was really, I can write a book only on the politics and the emotions that were put into this issue. And as you could hear, there are a lot of agreements, and there are a lot of course, facts and understandings. But you could probably hear also the disagreements, which is great. In terms of science leading to policy, we heard about the industry. We heard about, of course, the water shortage. We heard about many options. And now I want to start our discussion that were kind of lectures. Hold on, how do I stop this share? Yeah, but, okay. Yeah, but it didn't appear here. But, okay. No, Tamara is here. Only Shaddad and my son are online. But can we see them? Yeah, so we can see them. Okay, so we just moved to Tamara in the meantime, and then Shaddad and I will start with asking you the questions. So, okay, fine. Yeah, sure.
Because I really want to respect the other speakers. I must say before I'll take a few words that I'm working for the Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel, and sometimes people ask me, and people do ask that question. Why do I really care about that? I mean, we want to be successful in life. We want to make money. I know people might sound very strange, but people are asking sometimes, why do we have to protect nature? Why do we have to, fight climate change? What's wrong with just letting things, do their whatever they need to do? Just as, for example, Ittai said, let's do business as usual. Suggest. And one of the suggestions, now you've spoken of, and it's an option. It is definitely an option. Why do we have to protect nature? You know what? We don't have. It is our choice, and it's for us to decide if we want, in what kind of world we want to live. Right? So it's not a must, but let's decide this is what we want to or not. And what I want to say is that I really like the title of this session, because I think it captures two of the three major issues that we have to change in our attitude if we want to make Dead Sea and the Jordan River alive and natural again. If we don't, we don't. But if we do, we have to make some change in the way we look at it. And now I'm turning into more of a policy approach. And the title says one thing is that from extraction to restoration. And again, it could be surprising to some, but the way that the State of Israel, like ministries, and the way that the Dead Sea is managed, and also the Jordan River in the last 60 years, is by looking at it totally and only in economic way. And again, it's not a bad thing, but that's the way you look at it. The ministry that manages Dead Sea is the Ministry of Finance, and what they see in front of their eyes is how much we can make from it. The Dead Sea works were a governmental factory for many years, and then it became private. But then this is what they see: how much money can we make from it? And the people around it, the people that are working in the factories and the plants there, how much money they make. So it's not bad things, but this was only looked at from economic perspective. And if we want to see something else, we want to look at it with a more that sees also the environment and the people and the communities and neighbors, then we have to move from only extraction kind of approach to rehabilitation. And the second thing that is captured in this title of the session is rethinking policy for the Jordan River and Dead Sea. So again, maybe surprisingly, but the way that these areas are managed by the state, the Jordan River and the Dead Sea, are completely separate. And again, I'm not saying it as blame. This is managed by this is something else. But if you ask the people in the government, some of them will almost forget that the Dead Sea is actually connected to the Jordan River. The Jordan River actually flows into the Dead Sea. They are completely separately managed. So this is another change that we have to do approach if we want to get involved. And the third thing is not in the title, but it is actually in the session, and that is to move to regional. In the kind of we have here Simmons for that, so we are looking at it like how can we look at it not only from a domestic Israeli kind of way, which was very important, but also with the Jordanian and Palestinian. This is something that I think many professionals do, but the policy level and the ministry level is still very weak. Of course, changes with the politics. So these are some kind of thoughts to open, and then I think.
Thank you so much, Tamara. Maybe you can start sitting in. So I try to arrange the chairs so that Shaddad and Maysoon will see us and we'll see them. We'll try. Maysoon, I would like to start with you. If you could share with us the Jordanian perspective, and with your permission, I would like to hear your thoughts about mainly 3 points. One, and maybe the most obvious, is the water shortage, of course. The second one is the industry. We sometimes hear, and we heard just now from Ittai, and we know that the industry is on both sides of the sea, and we get that a lot. We will hear about the end of the concession soon, but many times we hear in Israel there is also industry in Jordan, and it's there is a term for that in social psychology. You blame the other one, and they blame you, and nobody will do anything, and it keeps deteriorating. And the third is the question of regional cooperation. How do you see this is a shared basin, it's a shared sea. How do you see from the other side of the sea the option to cooperate on that?
Thank you very much for this nice presentation. Although when they start, I don't know if the same with Shaddad, I didn't hear well most of the presentation, the talks, but I follow what is in the slides. But Tamar, I heard you well. So yes, I will start.
You know Ittai, you met Ittai in university.
I hope you will share the recording later on because great presentations. So, of course, Jordan faces significant challenges due to declining water levels in the Dead Sea and reduced flow of the Jordan River. Jordan views the future of the Jordan River and Dead Sea as a critical challenge requiring both regional cooperation and internal reforms to address severe water scarcity and environmental decline of the Dead Sea. Jordanian perspective is characterized by a need for both supply side solutions like regional water projects and desalination, and again also a demand side solutions like improved water efficiency. But ultimately, Jordan seeks sustainable future for its water resources, which is seen as vital for national stability, economic development, especially given climate change and population growth. But this is the perspective of Jordan toward the Jordan River and the Dead Sea. What you said about the industry, I don't know if you heard, in 2010, we started our own, I don't know if you remember this project, because we used to send Montgomery Watson to meet the Israelis and the Palestinians. And the idea, it is the Jordan Red Sea Project, what we call it, and part of and saving the Dead Sea was part of it. So one of the things that we thought about at that time, because this project, the plan is Jordan will do it itself, and definitely it will be expensive to Jordanian. So we were looking at a new type of financing. One of them is that the concept of polluter pays. So one of the things we wanted at that time, we drafted a draft law to cross subsidize the tariff, because it is not the poor Jordanian fault to pay with mismanagement, receiving a lot of refugees, and our problem that lead us to have this expensive resource of water. So one of them is to ask the industry to pay or to pay some part of the project or with the tariff later on, because at that time the idea was based on BOT project, and you will end up like what we are doing now. So yes, definitely the transboundary nature of this resources, definitely it won't be solved without regional cooperation. But regional cooperation, which it should be based on fair and equity and win-win or positive sum situation. So this is, I don't know if I answer your question or you want me to elaborate more.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Let's move to Shaddad and then go back to you in the second session. Shaddad, thank you for joining us. I think at least maybe, I don't know, when speaking about the Dead Sea, at least, when I was minister, we signed an MOU with Jordan regarding the rehabilitation of the northern Jordan Valley. But the Dead Sea and of course a large part of the Jordan Valley and the Jordan River itself is actually joined between, it's a trilateral era. So from the Palestinian perspective on water, on, let's call it the livelihood, on the communities around the economy, and also the question of regional cooperation and building trust. We know this is, especially on Israel-Palestine, this is maybe the worst times. I don't know since when, I don't want to grade it, but can you share with us the Palestinian perspective on this basin and on the current situation in all terms, economic, environmental, and political?
Sure, Tamar. It's even with a pleasure sharing our perspective related to both Jordan River and the Dead Sea. let me first thanking you for inviting me and Maysoon as well to speak to you, to the Israeli audience, hoping that next time we will be present physically as the issue of Jordan and the Dead Sea, it's of our concern. And let me, before providing our perspective, just commenting on the presentation that I agree totally with what has been presented scientifically. I have certain comment just because I just returned back from Jordan. I have visited the Ministry of Water and Irrigation, and I posed a question about the brine for the national Jordanian project because I know the concern of the Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Israel about rejecting the brine in the Gulf. And the answer I received from the Ministry of Water that the brine will be taken out to the desert in the solar pan. So this is the response, which is really it relaxed me because Jordan now is proceeding with the project. It's now around the $3 billion project, speaking about 300 million cubic meter of the desalination. It's unfortunate that Jordan went unilaterally because myself, with Sylvain Shalom and His Excellency Hazem al Nasser, we signed the regional sharing after negotiating with Maysoon and the Israelis 10 years on the Dead Red Canal. And actually, the financially, the feasibility, it's feasible. Financially, it requires 11 billion, but also as we saw for the modeling that they requested a pilot to test the mixing as with two seas, two saline seas mixing the formation of gypsum and red algae bloom and all that stuff. So now the comment with the future of the Dead Sea that and the mitigation. Okay, so I agree totally that maybe we shouldn't look at business as usual. I hate this slide that because we hear this from Israel Environmental Authority 15 or the time we were negotiating that no worry, the Dead Sea will not disappear. Would you like to have the Dead Sea like the RLC? Okay, it will not disappear, but it will not look like the Dead Sea that we see today or the Dead Sea that was present in the early 30s. Okay, so let's be optimistic and let's be courageous to start changing and working something different. Let's start thinking differently because in the past 70 years, okay, and in the past recent years, we were doing things and unfortunately, we were really non-successful. It's a complete failure. And who paid the price? It's us, it's our generation, it's the Jordan River and the Dead Sea. And the proof is there. Just go there and you see it's really drawing on yearly basis, as you said, 1 meter. So the alternative, it could be the desalination, the treated wastewater, the mitigation, addressing all climate change, and also, as Maysoon said, the polluter pay. Those who's killing and accelerating the dying of the sea has to pay because they are benefiting. Whether the salt companies in Israel side or the potash company in Jordan side, they have to contribute and maybe desalinate and add some water to the sea because at the end of the day they are taking the water and send it, and now they are taking from the northern part to the southern part and doing this dryness and collecting the mineral. But what I would like to add here that the Dead Sea and the Jordan River is not only the victim of the our region shortage, no, it's also the conflict. We shouldn't forget, and here's my advice to you, Tamar and the Israeli, please stop looking at the Jordan River as an Israeli river. Please stop looking at the Dead Sea as an Israeli Dead Sea. No, this is a transboundary. And instead of, because we kept talking about cooperation, this is a Mickey Mouse terminology, frankly. There is a regional obligation. I repeat, there is a regional obligation, our colleague Israelis especially. Whether we continue killing each other, we have to know and we have to learn how to live together. Because we are sharing environment, we are sharing water, we are sharing everything, we are sharing lands. And because we are sharing, and now it's not a cooperation, it's an obligation. And the obligation because we are all on this land and we are all impacting with the climate change. We are all drinking from the same aquifer. We are all losing this Jordan River and the Dead Sea. And if, as Mr. Yaron said, if we rehabilitate both Jordan River and the Dead Sea, and there is only, because he spoke about Israel, that several billion of return, so let's allocate 5%, 10% of this return to the life of the Jordan River and the Dead Sea. So now polluter pay principle, and because we are envisaging and we are certain, because we did model and there is tourism and there is reviving and there is a lot of money coming, this allocating of certain money that comes in 20 years after we manage to rehabilitate, to continue to preserve the Jordan River and the Dead Sea. This is something that we didn't try. And third, before 7 October, and I hope that we are both recovering from 7 October soon, we shouldn't forget that there are neighbors that already are riparian in the Jordan River and the Dead Sea. Yes, we are now talking about the lower Jordan, but no, you don't hear the lower riparian of the Nile or the lower riparian of Danube. No, it's a transboundary, all party are riparian. And we were talking, and this is Tamara and Maysoon, I would like to speak to you about this initiative I was preparing. You know, in Lebanon, there are more than 400, 500 million wasting and to the sea. So it's the fish who's drinking from this water and the people is dying out of thirst. And why is that? And also the Lebanon, they are losing this Litani River may soon because of pollution, because no power flow, and all factory reject their discharge polluted. They killed the river, they killed the fish. Okay, so they need around 800 million to rehabilitate the river. And now Israel, you know, may soon what they are doing now, Israel? They are doing a reverse pumping of a high costly water, the desalinated water, where to Tabiria Lake. You know how much they allocated money? $250 million, 800 million shekel. We are all in Lebanon, in Israel. We're doing a Mickey Mouse business because we're not speaking to each other and we're not taking things seriously. So if we're saying to the whole world, and the whole world loves to see Jordan, Israel, Palestinian come in an initiative. If we're telling them that, guys, now I was calling my initiative that I want to present to you a regional integration. Maybe now I need to call it a regional obligation. Obligation, because there is a Dead Sea who's paying the price and disappearing. There is the Holy River, and from a religious perspective, the Holy River shouldn't look like this, Maysoon. Okay, we shouldn't kill a holy river for our Christian beloved people. Okay, I'm Muslim and I'm speaking about holy river of a Christian, and this is Tamar. It's unique on earth. It's not only the saltiest body on earth. It's not only the lowest point on earth. It's the holy river on earth. So we have all this, and if we go and see that, please, Lebanon need 800 million to rehabilitate, because we need to take this 400 million, we need to purchase it, the Palestinian, the Jordanian, we need to reserve this water that we are purchasing from Lebanon and Tiberia Lake. So we put there 200, 300. Now Israel is benefiting, no need to invest $250 million for reverse pumping. Wallahi, it's not good for Israel image, because you are marketing yourself as water high tech. And if people see that you are reverse pumping, okay, it's reverse pumping, high cost, other than the $50 price of water, it's the cost of the pumping and the transfer to the lake. It's just because you need to deal with the lowering of the lake and the salinity. No, the solution, it's in Lebanon. We get that water, okay, we buy it, we reserve it, we swap the water we take from Ashkelon, then the same quantity that we got to reserve it. And let me tell you that I had this discussion with certain people in Israel, okay, and they said, we love this. 7 October happened and then destroy everything. But we need to start speaking about regional integration. If Lebanon will benefit from the international financing, as they are selling gas, they are selling water to us, as you are selling water to us also. So I would love, Maysoon, also that you return also to the Green Blue Deal. This is benefiting Jordan. I'm a Palestinian, but frankly, okay, it's an excellent project for Jordan. Okay, yeah.
Shadad,
Anyway,
let me ask
I
you.
spoke a lot, but this is
No,
because
fine.
I couldn't be in person with you. But this is my early reaction to the presentation and to your conference, Tamar.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. I think you brought a more regional, a wider regional perspective, reminding us that it's not just a trilateral, it's actually a five-lateral perspective with Lebanon and Syria in the source of, especially if we look at the Jordan River. But I want to ask all the speakers in reverse order and start with you, Shadad, because what I found very interesting in your statement is that you related, you stressed the cooperation or the obligation, as you said, but you related to the environmental and nature part, which I found very, very interesting because honestly, I thought when speaking to a Palestinian these days, I would hear another order of priorities. And I found it very interesting that we have in common here the shared environment. So I want to go back, start with you and then Maysoon on the order of priorities between the environment, the nature, that can sometimes be perceived, as Tamara said, as a luxury, versus the economics, the water economy, the communities, the agriculture in the region, or are these combined? So Shadad and then Maysoon
Yeah,
on this.
Tamar, I cannot really prioritize.
Yes, and we are
I cannot.
approaching to the end of our panel, so please, like 2 minutes each, and
Okay,
then
I
I
cannot
take you on that.
prioritize environment over anything else. It's all interlinked. This is why we are the people who speaking about the nexus. We are the people who speaking about water, energy, food, environment, climate change. Okay, who comes first? I don't know. Frankly, maybe sometime maybe climate change comes first, but it's impacting water. If energy enhance all things, then energy comes first. All together, okay, I look at them as a one circle interlinked that we need to work on them all. The idea that all these things are shared, all if we address energy, okay, and this is why also we have Maysoon something else that we're still under occupation. Yani, if we want to install renewable energy in area C, we couldn't have access there. Okay. So we don't forget, we Palestinians, and we will never forget that we keep calling, okay, in all our conferences and all our reach out to you, that occupation must end, okay, because cooperation needs dignity, equality, respect, okay. And I thank you, Tamar, because you started speaking about the shared nature of the Jordan River and the Dead Sea. This is not what here from the officials at your side. Okay, this is why business as usual, and this is why there is no change is made. Now, with this campaign, with this initiative, okay, we will put our hands in your hand with Maysoon, and just to make things different, just to present that we do care. Those people who are living on a holy land, okay, we do care about everything in it, and we are happy despite all the criticism, especially these days about normalization of this. Because we know that we live together, okay, and inshallah, Tamar, inshallah, and at these places, our mutual cooperation obligation will inshallah deliver something good.
Thank you, Maysoon.
Hi, Tamar. So from my perspective, I'm against start talking about water market, importation water. Water, it's a human needs, and for Jordan, it is a security. I'm not on depending on this resource on even our neighbors, no matter who is he. We have to work hard on our resources and to be more efficient. And this is what our strategy said. Definitely now, if you see the new strategy, you will see the nexus, the Wi-Fi nexus is there. Although the environment and the ecosystem is there, we keep some water to it. The availability of water is very low in Jordan. That's why we have a special allocation policy where drinking purposes is number one. For agriculture, we manage by water demand management in agriculture to reduce it from 70% to 50, 40% of it is reclaimed water. The idea of reclaimed water is to use it for agriculture and free some fresh water. For the project, it is not only 3 million, it is according to the GCF website, it is 6 billion. But again, it's a BOT, and after 25 years, most of the water will be used for drinking purposes, and this means the quality of water will be good enough to be treated again. So we're talking not only 300, it is like almost 500 something, because 70% of the water it is used. The plan is, while we have this water, we will give some time to replenish our, let's say, sick aquifers. Ecosystem and environment within Jordan territory is there. But if you talk about the Jordan River and the Dead Sea, Jordan, we are not behind the declination. We will not say now who is behind what. But again, we are not the one who caused the flow of the Jordan River to be very low. And because of that, definitely the industry is there. It is when I heard this, it's good to start raise it with the government. And we did this study, and they said 40% of the water is gone by the industry, but they forget how much water was diverted from the beginning of Jordan River. For us, to keep the sea, I'm with corporation, I'm with regional. I do believe in this, Tamar, but it's better to have a positive some win-win situation rather than somebody sell water and we have the tap in one hand and we see what happens. We are talking about Jordanian. They see what happens in Gaza before that. The water committee and the Palestinian Authority as well. They cannot even do anything. Like he said, if I have a project in that area, they cannot do it. So what we see right now will be, I'm not with, for the time being, maybe in the future, when we have a good history later of good cooperation, win-win situation, fair share, maybe. But with water itself, I'm totally against treating water as a commercial commodity. Because in Jordan in particular, we need it for drinking purposes. I'm sure it is the same case in Israel. And you remember when you want to buy water from Turkey, then you think about it twice, 3 times, and then you cancel this decision, although the infrastructure is ready and they want to sell you. Water in Middle East is security. Better now to be more efficient, to work win-to-win situation with the riparians. Like he said, it is where there is international water law, there is commitment. I'm with the common to win-win situation, to share common interest and to benefit rather than it is obligation, because we're talking about a shortage amount of something that is very scarce. This is I am with. I'm sad because even when we mention the brine, I saw somebody from Saudi. They do mining and they give it to Chinese company to take out minerals from it. The environmentalists in Jordan, they said no, we should not forget restoration of the Dead Sea. We have a brine. If you can, we're ready to give it maybe some brackish water. We have to think how we can restore the Jordan River, like our initiative, and we will do this if it is under Green Climate Fund or if we have some international or third party sponsor. Now we will not talk about desalination or freshwater. Let's talk the same red to dead, but with saving or restoration the Dead Sea or Jordan River. I think if we can come up with a big project, then later on maybe Lebanon will be there. Syria and its riparians, they shouldn't sign peace treaty to protect or to protect or to be responsible if there's something damage happen, if it will be at international level.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maysoon. So with that, I go back to Yaron and Tamara. You don't want to talk about the okay. So we'll go back to the concession. We are in a very interesting days. So I would like us to ask you, Tamara, two things. One, regarding the ecological and environmental demands or aspects that need to be put into the new concession. We are 60 years after the old concession. The world has changed, the environment has changed, the polluter pays principle is now much more embedded, and so what implications does that have on the new concession? That's one. And the second, if you can tell us a little bit about the NGO coalition, what are the tools that the civil society has to affect and to impact what's going to happen?
So about the new concession, as people already said here, as you already know, this concession was given in the beginning of the 60s, and it's about to end in 2030. But it's not that we have 2-3 years to make a difference. The new law to make the new concession is going to be discussed now. So it's going to be in the next couple of months, if we are lucky, probably, because it's a very long process. So this is a very unique kind of window of opportunities. And so this is one thing. And the new concession has to implement several new approaches that we discussed. One thing is where is a good place? So I should be here? Here? Maybe I'll be here like that. Anyway, so three main points about the concession that as the environmental organization believe must be changed. One was discussed here a lot, the issue of the water. The factories, the plants, the Dead Sea works, they take a huge amount of water every year, and they do not pay even for it, which means, first of all, no polluter pay. That must change. And they also have no incentive to minimize the amount of water they use. They can be much more efficient if they would pay for it. So the idea is that they would have to give back every cube that they take. They use cubes of water, okay, they should bring it back. It could be by paying for it, but we emphasize the fact that the water that they take must be brought back, and they should be flowing back from the original way that they used to flow from the Jordan River. Is it easy? No, but that should be the goal. And let's begin with them paying for each cube of water that they take and be responsible for making this water back into the place. So this is one point. The second point is that the current concession has nothing about the environment in it. Okay, they have no responsibility over the environment. Of course, during the years, because of all kind of litigation and other laws, they were made responsible for some of them, but it's impossible to enforce. So the new concession must make sure that the polluter pays. Again, that the companies and the factories that are working there are responsible to restore all the damages that they make. So that's a second point. And the third point is about, now it slipped from my mind. The space that is the concession, they have rights not only on the sea itself where they work, but on a huge part of the land around it that surrounds the Dead Sea from the Israeli side. So this must be, bring back the factories to what they need. They can't they can't have rights about all the region there where they take water from the ground and they take sand, and it's like their own country all around there. So that's the third thing. And for that, we have now a coalition of organizations, about 6 environmental organizations in Israel that are working together, like EcoPeace and Green Course and what is the name of the Bar Kaima and Sustainable Desert and the Guardian of the Dead Sea and we all work together to do 3 things. One, work via the media to start making, bringing this into the awareness of people. Second, work with government and the parliament, government relationship to prepare everything that is needed to work in the Knesset, in the parliament, once the bill is submitted, and to work with the public, to let the public know what's going on and kind of allow the public to engage and also hopefully make an impact for a better concession. One last thing that we are asking is also to prepare a long-term vision. Like Ittai mentioned that they said, okay, let's look at 2050, not now, not when the concession ends. Very good. Okay, now the concession, we're going to have a new concession and we're going to have to make it better. But parallel to that, let's think what do we want to see in 20 years, in 30 years? Okay, what's going to happen at the end of this concession? Let's start to prepare for that today. So that's also another thing that we're demanding. And yeah, it's probably going to start very, very soon, like in the next few days. So keep tuned, stay tuned.
Thank you so much, and we're going to have our last few minutes and the last word to Yaron, to inspire us going out of this room. And with that note, thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Okay. So start dancing? No. Okay. First of all, I would like, before I move on and say a few words, and I'm going to be short, thank you again for Tamar, and I think we need to applaud because she actually initiated our group, the one that we're working on, and with several kind of organizations, and of course this session. So thank you very much, and we're really glad that we have you also at Ben-Gurion University to take these initiatives and different projects forward. And I think that a lot of things are happening. So again, thank you very much. Again, in very, very short, there are 2 points I would like to emphasize. First of all, I think that we should look at the lower or southern Jordan River and the Dead Sea as one unit, one system. We cannot separate these 2 ones. If we just look at the Dead Sea, I can see your point. I'm not sure that I agree, Ittai, but I definitely see your point. And when we think about the consequences, the geomorphological one, but also the ecological, ecosystem consequences, definitely the Jordan River has to be taken into account because we lost and we're going to lose more habitats, more species, and we have this obligation. So basically, when we look at the system as a whole, the trade-off between the risks, the costs, and the benefits change. So again, talking about Dead Sea, I'm not sure this is the right thing to do. We have to look at everything. And the Jordan River is definitely a very, very precious and important treasure that we have, and we have the obligation to keep it. Now, this actually brings me to the second point, and I would like to thank Dr. Shadad Atili for what he said, and others as well, and is that we have the obligation not only of Israel, but the entire region, the other countries as well. But because Israel is pretty much dominant, I think this is the Israeli government obligation to make sure that we put all these neighbors together. Now, this is the obligation of the region. It's the obligation, the commitment of all the countries. Jordan River does not belong to Israel. It belongs to the entire world's citizens. and we only have the duty to keep it as is, and we have to do it with our neighbors. We must do it with our neighbors. So I agree with these 2 points. Unfortunately, the skeptic point that I would like to raise, but I will have also a positive one or optimistic one. So I'll start with the skeptic ones. I don't see, and we don't have, unfortunately, the right governments here and around us to make the change. So I'm skeptic about that. And it will be very, very difficult to do what we here suggest to do in the current situation. So we have to, face reality. To be optimistic, I do hope that we'll see some change in the future. And I really hope that at a certain point, and hopefully sooner than later, the governments will be different, and we will see different movements and different initiatives that take care and look at the citizens and the people, not only at the political, situation of specific people. And with this in mind, I would like to emphasize the contribution of the Society of Protection of Nature, EcoPeace, and other NGO, because it is in our hands, all the people, as the public, to push and to make sure that our governments do the right thing. And I would like, again, to conclude with this statement. We must be optimistic in a way that we keep pushing, we keep rising this issue, we keep talking, we keep making other people, the entire citizen, the entire population, the entire people in each country aware of this situation, aware of the difficulty, and aware of the negative future effects. And if we make sure that we let people know, and the public will make the right choice to change the government, also from the environmental perspective, how do you say that? Inshallah? Inshallah. Thank you very much.